Okay guys, Miss Van is still out, so I'm going to go through a couple of things with your next lesson on here today. So if you need to go back and rewind this, obviously if you're watching on phone or your computer or whatever like that, you can certainly pause it, rewind, whatever, but it's the same as any other YouTube video, so you can go ahead and do that. We are going to be looking at 4.2 in your book, and in case you don't know where that is, it's about page 85 or 86 in there. So I've got a few notes to go through with you guys just so you understand it, hopefully, and then you can go back and look at it more if you need to after that. Alright, this is, like I said, section 4.2, and that whole section is going to be about multiplying polynomials. So it will look familiar from Algebra 2 for you guys, and it goes along with a couple of your standards that you guys had for the Coyote, which you guys are going to be taking here in about a month or a month and a half. Okay, a couple of things with this. Remember, the distributive property tells us a couple of things. So this is the general rule for the distributive property, and just kind of be aware of this one. But everything can kind of fit in this. We'll talk about how it gets more difficult as we go. If you have some number times a sum or a difference, that's supposed to be a plus. That's supposed to be a plus sign, but I haven't had to write anything for a year now, so there we go. A times B plus C means you're going to do A times B plus A times C. That's the rule for the distributive property, no matter what it looks like. Whatever is outside of the parentheses gets multiplied by all of the terms inside the parentheses. So we're going to write that out. Here's one with more like what you're going to see. If you had 2 times 4x plus 5, something along those lines, it would be 2 times 4x plus 2 times 5. And then you could simplify that one a little bit more and figure out what you've got from there, 8x plus 10. And that would be kind of the way it kind of finalizes things. But remember, that number or variable, this expression out front right here, whatever that is gets multiplied by everything inside the parentheses. And that's how you're going to come up with a final expression for the end of this thing. A more complicated example, probably something like you're going to see in your book, if you look at something like 2x cubed, and then you got an x cubed minus 8x, then you can go ahead and do that 2x cubed, because that's the number up front. You can do that times the x cubed on the inside. So for that part, we were doing 2x cubed times this first term. Notice there's a minus sign in between here, so the next one's going to be a negative, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to have 2x cubed times 8x. Now, even though that looks more complicated, you still are going to treat it the same way when you go through here. You have 2x to the third next to the third. Remember, that's 3x's and 3x. That makes 6x's, because when you multiply numbers that have the same base, x cubed and x cubed, you add those exponents. Negative 2 times positive 8 is negative 16, and that's going to be x to the cubed and x to the first. Even though we don't usually write that 1 there, it's still there, so we did keep track of it. And we get x to the fourth, and that would be the final expression that you would come up with after simplifying that. So that's great. This is still, all three of these examples, the general rule that you see at the top here, the one with the 2 out front, and the one with the 2x cubed, all of those have one term multiplied by a couple of things inside parentheses. You don't have to have just one term, and that's where this next little part will come into play. So when we look at something like that, we're going to have, let's go with 2x minus 3 times 4x plus 5. When we look at that, even though that's more things to multiply altogether, you're still going to kind of treat it the same way when you do that. The first term you have here is 2x, and that 2x needs to be multiplied by the 4x and the 5. So again, the way I got that, I did 2x times 4x and 2x times 5. I multiplied 2x by both of them. I'm going to go ahead and do, on the other one here, I've got negative 3 times 4x and negative 3 times 5. Negative times a positive is going to be a negative. 3 times, whoops, press the button, 4x. Negative 3 times 5 now is going to be negative 3 times 5. And notice I'm writing it all out. You can probably simplify 3 times 5 in your head without having to write that step, but just to explain where things are coming from, I'm writing it. 2x and 4x, 8x squared. 10x, 12x, and 15. Now you might stop there, except for there's a couple of like terms that go together really easily. I know that's one of the standards that you guys have been looking at. These two both have just an x to the first power, so we would simplify that to make a final expression right here, 8x squared minus 2x minus 15. And that one, you're going to look at it like that. I'd prefer to call everything that we're doing a distributive property. There's some other terms that your book uses for that. That I'm not going to get into, but if you want to read, you're certainly welcome to do that. I have one more that I wanted to go through with you guys. Like, even if it looks more complicated than what you're looking at right here, you can still get to the point where you're able to do this type of question. So what I want to do is the most complicated example I can. Then I'm going to give you a break and let you break from my video, let you try some of the examples with your teacher there. And then I've got a video that kind of explains, as you're doing the homework, if you needed to check out 1, 2, 3, 4, I think I got 5 or 6 examples I'm going to do for you guys on a separate video. So the last example we've got here for this one would be, what if it's a larger looking distributive property problem? All this multiplying polynomial stuff comes down to the distributive property problem, so that's why we're going to deal with it like that. So I'm going to go 2x plus 5 to start, because that's what I felt like picking. And then right here we've got for the rest of this 3x squared plus 6x minus 7. This is not in your book as far as I can tell. I just made this one up to kind of give you what you have to do if there's more stuff out front. So when we look at this, there's a couple of ways to approach this. Now here's how I'm going to do it. My first term right here is 2x, and my second term is 5. That's the first set of parentheses, has 2 terms. Then this is a term, this is a term, and this is a term. So I've got 2 things in the first set of parentheses and 3 things in the second set of parentheses. That's going to be 6 multiplication problems that all is wrapped into one right here when we simplify this. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to write 2x, because that was my first term, times that whole second set of parentheses. 3x squared plus 6x minus 7. And then I'm going to go, because 2x and 5 right here in the first set of parentheses are separated by a plus sign, I'm going to put a plus here. I'm going to do 5 times all of the things in the second set of parentheses. And if you look at that carefully, that's going to be exactly the same thing we were doing up at the top there when we were looking at some of that other stuff. You were still multiplying each term by both sets of parentheses there. So when we look at that, now I can do 2x times 3x squared, 2x times 6x, and 2x minus 7. That's 3 of the little multiplication problems we have. And I can also do 5 times 3x squared, 5 times 6x, and 5 times negative 7. So I'm going to go through that in this next step. Remember, x times x cubed, or x squared, is going to be x cubed. 2x and 6x, 12x squared, and then minus 14x. That's the first 3 multiplication problems over here. Now I multiply through by a 5. 15x squared, 30x, minus 35. Again, you're going to look for some like terms. That's going to be something that can trip people up if you're not careful. Notice I've got x cubed. I've only got one of those terms, 6x cubed. That's over here, and it's done. I got x squared here, and I've got x squared here. Positive 12 and positive 15. I'm going to put them together and get 27. X squared. Minus 14x plus 30x. It's like 30 minus 14. So that's going to be a 16x. And then the minus 35 is all by itself again. Okay, now that you've done that, in a second you're going to pause there, or just stop this video because you'll have another one. What I would like you guys to do is on page 87 in your MCCR book, you're going to see example 1. It's got parts A through D. They kind of run through them, but before you look at the examples in the book, try them yourselves and then compare them together, and then look at the examples in the book and see if you're on the same page. After that, I have a second video. Your teacher's going to give you your assignment, which is page 88, number 1 through 26. And what I'm going to do is there'll be a second video that I'll give to the teacher that's going to be linked. That's going to give you, I'm going to run through about 5 or 6 of those problems with you. So I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks, guys.